I think when I first started leading, when I was looking for volunteers, I had this idea in my head that they had to be like professional at what they did. They had to have like the skill. But as I began to lead, I started to see like, no, actually, if someone is teachable and they have a heart to serve and they're willing to learn, then that's actually going to better my team. If you want a team that is going to last, you really want to focus and build relationships. And even when you do have that team and it takes off, you never want to stop investing in people because
well, hey, welcome to the Sunday Social Podcast, where we help churches build their social media. And today's guest, we have an awesome person who has been able to build her church's social media where she was at the time from just her to around 15 people. And that is incredible to start from 1 to 15. She was able to build that, and that team is still going to this day, even with her not being there, which is a true test of a leader. She's, fun fact, the first employee here at Sunday Social, and she's been killing it and rocking it and doing some amazing things. So without further ado, help me welcome to the episode Briana Zananiri. No, I knew I was going to butcher that. Zananiri. Zananiri. Dang it.
No, I said my own name wrong.
Okay.
Zananiri.
Zananiri. See, I told you I was going to butcher it.
Sorry.
Literally right before the episode, we practiced this and I got it wrong.
You know what's funny is I've been married almost 4 years, and to this day I have to have like a certain cadence when I'm writing it out, or else I forget how to spell it myself. So that's okay.
See, okay, I don't feel bad. You get tongue tied on your own last name, so that's awesome. But hey, how are you? How's things going? You good?
Things are going great. Derek and I, we used to live in the same city, San Antonio. Yep. I have since moved to Fort Worth, and yeah, it's great. It's going good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How's the weather over there? I'm sure it's the same.
So hot. It's so
I know
hot.
It's depressing, right?
And it's like, I thought like moving 4 hours north of San Antonio, we would have like some cooler weather, but no, it's like a different type of hot too. It's like really dry here.
I know. I'm like, it's almost October and like still in the 90s. I don't understand. It's like, what in the world's going on? But yeah, so we both, funny enough, like at the same time, we're building our social media teams at the churches we were at here in San Antonio. And I remember seeing the stuff that you guys were putting out at your church. And I was like, man, I have to have coffee with this person because they are crushing it. And I remember we had coffee. You kind of gave me the insight on how you were running things. And honestly, like not even like, blowing smoke, but you really helped out what we were doing at my church, just getting more organized, building the leadership team. And so when I was thinking of guests to have on this podcast, you were obviously on the top of my list, not just because you work here, I promise, but because I feel like you have a lot of knowledge, one, in social media, just in general, because you've done some awesome things with your personal brand, but then two, just what you've been able to accomplish and obviously leave, I think a good test of a leader is when they leave where they're at and it's still growing and it's still producing fruit, right? And I can still see Grace Avenue and the things that they've done. It's still excellent. It's like I can't see a fall off. I don't see where you left, right? And so that's kind of what I wanted to go into today. But before we go into that,
really quick. So, funny thing, when we met for coffee, because I thought the same thing about your church. I was like, man, they're killing it. They're doing such a good job. Like, why would he want to meet with me? I feel like they're doing so well. And so that just comes to show that like everyone is just trying to figure it out.
Literally, everyone's just like they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. And they assume, they do, so I'm gonna go hit them up, right? But that is funny though, because we were both like getting inspo from each other.
Yeah. So when you said you wanted to meet, I was like, I feel like they're doing such a great job. I don't know what kind of questions he has to ask.
Yeah, no, that's so true though. I think a lot of times we are afraid to like And I think that's the beauty of the church. It's like you can literally just ask to have coffee with somebody and they're willing to just share, you know, all it takes is that one ask. But yeah, so kind of give us a background on like your experience within the church, social media, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I was on staff at my church. I think I started back in 2016. And when I got hired, it wasn't for social media, it was for front of house. So I oversaw greeters, ushers, parking, hospitality, and our welcome team. And then I did like some project management for our church. And so social media wasn't even like a thought in my mind. I did go to school for communications and broadcasting. So that really didn't have anything to do with social media as well. But social media was like on the up and coming at the time. Like I think when social media launched, I don't know if businesses were ever a thought to be on social media. It was more so for like personal connection. And then as it began to take off, you started seeing churches promote and evangelize that way. And so I think it was back in 2017, I was like voluntold if I would take over the social media ministry. And another fun fact is the girl who started social media at our church, she actually works for Sunday Social also. Her name is Judy. I don't know if you've ever interacted with Judy, but she's really awesome. She does a lot of our editing and making sure that her captions and the content on our graphics and stuff is all correct with our grammar. And so she actually is the one who ran it for years and then handed it over to me. And so that's kind of how that happened. I was voluntold and I was like, okay, I've never done this before. So it was really fun to be like, to pioneer that area of ministry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, like you said, it was different back then in the sense that, like, it was something that churches were still hesitant to, like, hop on, you know? And I feel like in the beginning, it was real, like, it was focused on, like, photography and graphics and things like that. But so you started just by yourself. They were just like, hey, here, go capture something.
Yeah. So I think at the time, Judy did have like a few photographers. I think even at the time, my pastor was still like designing graphics. We were a small church. And so, and even like the photographers and people she had, they were amateurs. Another fun fact is Tony, who has done a lot of photography for Sunday Social. I think she's done a few reels. She actually was just starting to pick up the camera. And was self-taught. And now if you look at her stuff, you would have never known
that's crazy.
that she learned this skill from our church. But so I think it was just her and that was it. So there wasn't really much of a team when it was handed over to me.
So for you, right, I'm just curious, how long, okay, so you're running the social media, you're doing your thing. Was it just like a trial and error? Let me test stuff out. Let me try this, see what works. Were you getting inspiration from other churches? Like what was your process in the beginning?
Yeah, I was getting a lot of inspiration from churches, which I think can be a good thing, but at the same time, it could also be like falling into that trap of comparison because I would look at VU and I would look at Elevation, and of course, like the size of their church was nowhere near where we were at, and so a lot of
location.
Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of times I felt like I was having to play catch up, and I was just trying to keep up with what other churches were doing, instead of like being like, okay, Lord, this is what we have in our hands. What can we do with this? And I think over time, as you grow in your leadership, you kind of learn those things. You make mistakes along the way, right? But so in the beginning, I was kind of looking at what other churches were doing to help get us started.
Yeah. No, you bring such a good point to I feel like even to today, churches struggle with that, right? Like you're one person team, maybe you have a few people that you've added, and you look at these bigger churches that have staff members to fulfill these roles, and you start to compare like what they've been able to achieve, what their film team is capturing, or, you know, and we start to like doubt ourselves, or we're not good enough. Like, why are we even doing this? What's the point? But I always tell people, like, you have to look at your context and where you're at and just start with what's in your hand, right? It's all about stewardship. Like, okay, God, you giving me this iPhone 13 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I just got to go capture stuff and just tell the story of what God's doing here at my church.
Yeah.
And if you see that and you see what I'm doing and the people that I'm cultivating and stewarding, then I know you're going to honor that, you know? So that's awesome. Like, it is a tension to manage, right? Because we don't want to get in that trap of like, I got to be the next elevation, because more than likely you're not going to be, and that's okay. Like, God's called us each to do our own thing, you know? But,
right.
So from there, right, you being, you know, doing a lot of the legwork to get things going, was there a point where you're like, man, I have to start adding people to this team, otherwise, like, I'm just gonna burn out, like, I'm just gonna like crumble under the pressure?
Yeah, I was like, who can I poach from like other team? I'm just kidding. Because when you're in a small church, it's most likely you're not only serving on one team, right?
Yeah, straight up.
So I did a lot of like stalking and creeping on social media to see who maybe had like some secret talents we didn't know about, or who was posting really well on their social media. And so that's kind of how I started. I was like, okay, just asking around. And that's how I kind of started adding people to the team. And we started to get like a rhythm, and then people started hearing like, oh, this is actually a thing here at church. Like, how can I get on that team? I think also too, I'm not trying to like jump ahead, but I think when I first started leading, when I was looking for volunteers, I had this idea in my head that they had to be like professional at what they did. They had to have like the skill and knowledge of social media, which definitely helps, you know, that's like less training you have to do with the volunteer. But as I began to lead, I started to see like, no, actually, if someone is teachable and they have a heart to serve and they're willing to learn, then that's actually going to better my team than someone who maybe is an amazing photographer, but just doesn't have like a team effort attitude. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's if you're willing to put in the work, I want that person. Or if you're coming into this thinking, I already know what I'm doing, like, you don't got to tell me what, like, no, we don't want to deal with that, right? Like, we want a person that is able to see the vision, see what the church is doing, and get behind that and put their talent, so to speak, aside to say, you know what, whatever the vision is of this church, I want to go after that. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing you said, which I want to ask, is like, you said, oh, like we started building this thing, and then people were like, oh, I want to join that team, right? I feel like there's a point where your team starts to get to a place where like you're no longer looking for people, they're looking for you, right? What do you feel like was that key factor, or a few things that maybe it was a part of the culture of the team that people were looking? Because for one, right, the media team is not very visible to the church, right? So when you're there, like, they may see you taking photos, you know, hiding behind something to capture something, but it's not like a very public team versus like the greeting team, or, you know, the parking team, things like that. So when people are looking to get involved, I feel like the media team's not the first thing that they're looking for. What do you feel is like the thing that people were gravitating towards to be a part of?
Yeah, honestly, I think one of the big things we were known for at the church, and I think it's still known for this to this day, is just being a really fun team to be a part of. We definitely had a lot of fun when we were serving, whether it's on a Sunday or at an event, a photo shoot. Like, we just genuinely had a good time. And so I think the reputation of being a part of a fun team got around also. And I also think it was probably the content that we were producing, because like as we all grew in our skill for media, I thought we started putting out really fun and great content. And so I feel like that also attracted people. But more so than that, I think it was just the culture that we had in our team, because you know, we also would post too, like when we were serving together and having fun, like we documented that type of stuff, or whether it was hangouts. And I think that was something people were like, okay, this looks like something really fun to be a part of here at church.
Yeah, I would say similar for me too. That was my experience of like, it was just a fun team to be on, you know. I think I always told my team, like, man, how crazy is it that this is how we get to serve? Like, you know what I mean? It's so cool. I get to pick up a camera, go capture photos, and that's how I serve. Like, that's crazy to me, because that wasn't a thing a couple years ago, you know? Or I get to post on social media. Like, how also I get to scroll Instagram and find ideas. Like, what? You know? Like, if you really think about it, that is so cool. I get to serve God in that way. And then too, like, I don't know if you guys had like a room. Did you have like a media room or anything? Yeah. Similar to us. We had like a media room, and we had it was like a vibe. We had music, and it was just fun. Like, people looked forward to showing up on Sunday, because it was like, man, aside from me, you know, telling the story of the church, I get to hang out with my friends and capture some cool stuff. And then one thing too, like a little tip for anybody out there, is like, we had like a separate like Instagram that we would just post like our creative team stuff. Like, it wasn't a thing we publicized or put out there, but it was just fun to have like BTS stuff of like videos documenting us going out capturing. Like, I think we went to Marfa one time to capture like a cool video, and like, you know, it's just fun stuff that people want to share and be a part of. And it's like, man, why wouldn't I want to be a part of that team, you know? And so I think that's huge. Culture is huge. And beyond just like having the right people, it's like, how can we cultivate a space where people want to join this team, because we don't want it to be boring, you know?
Yeah. The church that I attend now, they have a set of values, and one of them is like celebration. And it's like, if you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong. And so I never wanted the team to feel like a second job. Everyone has jobs that they go to. And so when they come in on Sunday, I didn't want them to feel like they had a list of tasks to do. And so we made sure to have fun while we were doing it. I know that saying, we get to do this, you know, I know that has gotten like a bad rep, but for me, I genuinely like loved it. I like the same as you, like, I can't believe I get to do this. I'm genuinely having fun serving here at church and getting to do it with like an amazing group of people.
Yeah. It has become cliche, but the heart behind it is true. You know, like, we really do get to do this, and it's an honor when you really kind of sit and think about it. Like, it's an honor that we get to capture, because, you know, social media is for some people, like, we're in the front lines of like people seeing who we are as a church before they want to show up, you know. And so we get to play our part in like making it look cool. Like, our building at the church that I was at, our building was tiny, but people would show up, and because of the way we captured it, they're like, man, I thought this place was massive. I'm like, that wide angle lens got you. But you know, we were just trying new stuff and having fun, and I think that's the biggest thing. You just have fun. We would just experiment, try new things, like, you know, get this cool filter, or like, you know, whatever, and like try this preset or whatever, and it was just cool and it was fun. So once you had your team built, talk to me about, like, you know, obviously now you're transitioning yourself from less of a doer, more of a leader. What was that process like? Did you have to shift some things within the way you worked and how you led the team?
Yeah, honestly, that was really tough for me. So like, you know, recruiting photographers, videographers, like, that was the easy part. But social media, it was like my little baby, right? And that was hard for me to delegate in the beginning. I think also because like social media, you're getting messages, it represents your church online, right? And so I was like, okay, well, who should have a password? Who shouldn't have a password? And so for me, that was really difficult. But what I found tools and processes to where I could let go of some of those responsibilities that I felt like I had to do. I think another thing was because I was on staff at church, I felt like this was my job description, and if I wasn't doing it, then I felt guilty for getting paid. And my pastor at the time, Pastor Janelle, was actually like, no, you're actually really hurting your team if you are not delegating. Like you said, you should go from doer to like the visionary, the overseer of the team, because who knows, you're not going to carry this team forever. And so you want to make sure that you're equipping people for when that time comes. And so, yeah, I felt like a lot of the struggle was with me, because I felt like I had to do it all because I was the leader, especially with social media. So I came up with like processes and like training tools. That way, when I could fully let go of that task, they were already trained and equipped to do it. Does that make sense?
No, yeah. And did you have, like, going into Sunday, how did that work? Did you have like a game plan? Did you have a shot list? Like, talk to me about going into Sunday, how you set the team up for success.
Yeah. So what I always did is I had like our content calendar. I don't know if that's like old school, but for me, like just with my personality, that really helps because I want to make sure that I'm not dropping the ball, and that I'm like hitting our social media goals and making sure that everything that needs to get promoted is on there. And so I had my calendar, and then for the week, I would have a shot list for the team to film and capture on a Sunday. That way I made sure we had enough for our posts throughout the week. Another thing I did was when I was training people to take over for social media, I would encourage them like, okay, if you're going to come up with a post, a really great thing you can do is like scroll through our feed, see what we've posted in the past, to get a feel of like what our language is, what our, essentially what our vibe is, right? And then I would use like scheduling tools and have them go in there and like write captions. And before it could even get posted, I was able to go in there and like look through it. And then I could teach them, okay, like this is a word we don't use. Like we want to make sure we're using this language, or like, hey, this looks really good, but you left out this, or this picture, we wouldn't use this picture because it's the back of someone's head. We want to make sure we're seeing faces. And so I always felt like scheduling tools were like a really helpful thing to use to train those people in social media. But definitely shot lists, having that social media calendar, that was like, I felt like that was really, really helpful. And then I think another thing too is as creatives, we have like all these ideas, right? But then we don't put like to-dos or like assignments on it. And so we use Basecamp to like run everything. And so I made sure for like every post, there was a team member assigned to it. There was a due date. There was detailed information for them because I wanted to essentially, set them up for success and make sure they had everything they needed to capture the content.
So the big thing I'm hearing is just a system in place that ran pretty much most of what you guys were doing, right? Like, which I think is essential. And regardless of the size of your team, even if it's just you, having a system for you to understand and know and go into Sunday prepared and not just scrambling, scrolling, trying to find ideas. Even for my personal content, I'm like, I have a system that I'm like constantly trying to use to be able to produce the best content for me, right? So I think a system is huge. And it isn't like, I know you said Basecamp, which is awesome, but for you, it's whatever platform you want to use, whatever you're comfortable with, even if it's just your notes app, whatever that is, but find a system that is going to work best for you and your team and your team's needs, that they're not scrambling to try to figure out how to use. And you're going to be able to produce some awesome content in a way that's like, because the last thing you want is for your team to show up on Sunday and feel like, well, what did I even do? Well,
or what should I do? I'm not sure what to capture. And then they capture like a bunch of meaningless content that maybe you can't use throughout the week.
Exactly. And so they leave like, it's just bad on both ends. It's like, well, what did you capture? And then they're leaving like, well, why did I even show up? Like, I don't even know what I did. And so we want to build a space where serving is fun, but it's also fulfilling and it's effective. And we're capturing things that we need to capture based on whatever sermon series we're in or whatever season of life we feel the church is in. Like, we are aware of those things. And so as a social media manager or the leader or the director, we're putting in the work to have things prepared for Sunday so that way our team can come in and do that. So I love that because I'm sure when you started implementing that was probably a game changer for you guys, right?
Yeah, for sure. I like that you said that even if it's just you should do it. I always encourage, people who are just starting their social media team, like have that process already in place. That way, when you do add people to the team, like you're not trying to figure it out on the spot, like you're already prepared. Because no one wants to join a team that's, walking into chaos, right? That's disorganized. And so having that process already in place just makes the onboarding process a lot smoother.
Right. Yeah. It's like you have to have something. And again, this is where you get to lean into other people, or if you notice a church down the road is crushing it, like, hey, what are you guys doing? What system are you guys implementing that's allowing you to get volunteers in and feel like they're serving well? So that's huge. Yeah. That's why I reached out to Bree, you know, because I'm like, dude, what are y'all doing? Like, I have a team, but I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing it the right way. And it seemed like you guys were. So, you know, just to kind of wrap things up, what is some practical advice, you know, that you would give to somebody that was once in your shoes? Maybe they're in a smaller church and they're doing it all. They're a one-stop shop and they're trying to figure out how to leverage the people within their church. What are some practical things you would say to like, to recruit people on their team, right? What are some things that worked for you? But then also what can they do? What are some resources or tools they can start implementing that you felt like really took your team to the next level?
Okay, so I would say, first of all, the team is only going to go as far as their leader. So I would say just making sure that you stay healthy as a leader. Like, don't ever forget why you did this. I always make sure I tell leaders that, like, don't forget your first love. Like, make sure your relationship with Jesus is solid, because he's going to be the one to direct you while you're leading the team. You can't do this without him. So I would say just making sure, first of all, that you're staying healthy as a leader. 2, I would say, relationships. I feel like relationships is what really sustained our team. So I think, you know, if you're trying to post every single day, but you have like 2 people on your team, like that's just not, you just simply don't have like that's not sustainable. You don't have the manpower to do that. So I would say to cut back, and really invest in people before trying to do everything on social media. Maybe it's having like that conversation with your pastor, like, hey, I understand that these are our goals. I understand that this is like how many times we want to post, but before I feel like I can get us to a place, I feel like, you know, I have to build the team. And so I would say that if you want a team that is going to last, you really want to focus and build relationships. And even when you do have that team and it takes off, you never want to stop investing in people, because at the end of the day, like I tell people, like, we're not taking our likes, we're not taking our follows, right? Those are really great things. And that's not to diminish like what social media can do for your church. But at the end of the day, it's people. And so if you want a team that is going to sustain and last, you want to make sure that you're having relationships outside of church, and you're investing in the person, in their faith, making sure they're okay. Another thing is, so relationships, that's a huge one. Recruiting people, right? That's what you wanted to know. So I think some of the ways that you can recruit people and is really helpful after maybe you've stalked on social media. We used to host creative nights. Those were really fun because they were personal. People got to come and you can share your heart for the team and what the vision is and realistically what serving looks like. I think a lot of times some people get on teams and they're like, wait, how many times do I have to serve in a month? And what do we have to do during the week? And so just letting them know up front, like, hey, this is the commitment to the team. If your schedule allows, we would love to have you on the team. And then they're able to ask questions as well and get to know you as a leader leading the team. Another way that you can recruit people, which I used a lot, was who do you want to invest in at your church? Who do you want to disciple? Who do you want to spend time with? There was actually a girl who was at our church and she didn't have like a social media background, but I felt the Holy Spirit prompting me to invest in her. And so from there, she was very teachable. She was willing to learn. And from there, she actually like became like my right-hand person. Wow. And she was able to grow in that skill, but it all took like just the investment and the willingness. And then I think that goes hand in hand with just asking the Holy Spirit, like, okay, show me who, you'd want to have on the team. Direct me, reveal to me, what you have for our team and who can be a part of it.
Love that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is so true. At the end of it all, it's about people. Like, it's people are what's going to carry the mission. People are what's going to make this thing happen. And if we lose sight of the bigger picture and understand that it's like if we go beyond that, like things are just going to crumble. But if we invest in our people, one thing we would always say is that we want people's heart before their hand, right? Like we want them to know, like, dude, I care about you beyond what you can do, no matter how good of a photographer you are or videographer. Like, I want you to know, like we care about you as a person. And the better you can get that across to people, the more they're going to want to just naturally give up their time and the things that they're doing because they want to be a part of this, right? And then, the creative nights, that's a huge one. We did that. And I remember like one time we got like 20 people interested and we were like, what, where did you guys come from? Like, but again, it's not a very public thing that people know about. So they never know, like, how do I get interested or involved in this? And so when you say like, hey, if you're a photographer, videographer, we're having a night for you to come show up and learn about it. Like, it was crazy. And a lot of people stuck around for that and stayed on the team because of it. So if you can convince your leader or your pastor to do that, that was huge for us. And we were able to get a ton of people on the team. But
I think also, just really quickly, maybe you're listening to this and you're like, relationships scare you because maybe you're an introvert. I would call myself an introvert. I'm naturally like a shy person. But I really feel like, saying yes to my pastors and leading the team, like I really do feel like the Lord equipped me for this position. I don't think God is going to leave you where he leads you, right? And so I would just say, like, if you feel like you're a shy person and you don't know how to do it, I promise you God will equip you for the task at hand.
Let's go. I love that. I love that. Well, Bri, thank you so much for hopping on today's episode. I feel like there was a bunch of nuggets from today, and if you haven't, take notes, watch it again, take notes, and I'm sure that your team will grow in no time and you'll be crushing it on social media even more than you are now. But if you want to ask Bri some questions, can they hit you up on Instagram, or is that the best place?
Yeah, for sure. I love when people reach out to me asking questions, because I genuinely love helping the church and helping people. Like, building teams is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And so if you have any team building questions, my DMs, my email, it's always open.
Cool. Yeah, we'll have her Instagram in the description, and reach out, ask her questions. She has years of experience, and I'm telling you, this only scratched the surface of what she was able to learn and grow in. And so reach out to her, please, because she will hook you up. But other than that, thank you so much for watching today's episode, Sunday Social Podcast, episode 3. If you haven't yet, subscribe in all the places you should be subscribing, and see you guys in the next episode.